Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan, and today I'm excited to talk to you about my all-time favorite author, Kurt Vonnegut. Specifically, the 14 novels he published between 1952 and 1997. And here's the thing, I enjoyed all of them, so if a book is lower on the list, I still liked it. It just means I enjoyed his other books even more. And something that should be interesting is that in his book Palm Sunday, Vonnegut graded all of the books that he had written up to that point. So we'll get to compare ratings and see whether Vonnegut might have thought that I was either underrating or overrating his own books. So let's get started with his debut novel, Play a Piano, published in 1952. And a step backward after making a wrong turn is a step in the right direction. Play a Piano follows the story of an engineer that lives in a world dominated by a supercomputer and run completely by machines. This is an excellent dystopian work that borrows some world-building aspects from some books like Brave New World and puts the focus on technology, removing the need for human laborers. At this point, Vonnegut hadn't quite defined his absurd writing style, as this book is told in a more linear and plot-driven fashion. I think it could have been tightened just a little bit, but I think it was rather prescient, with some of those themes still being relevant today. For this one, I'm thinking a high B to a low A, and seeing as this one is a little bit underrated in my opinion, I'm going to show it some love and put it in A. If we compare this to Vonnegut's grade of a B and a Goodreads average rating of 3.90, I might have enjoyed this slightly more than some. I will admit that it is a slight step below some of his best works, but it's still an excellent read. The Sirens of Titan, published in 1959. There is no reason why good cannot triumph as often as evil. The triumph of anything is a matter of organization. If there are such things as angels, I hope that they are organized along the lines of the Mafia. The Sirens of Titan is a space adventure that features the richest man on Earth, a character that materializes on different planets, and a robot dog built by aliens. This tight, less plot-driven book takes a comedic but poignant look at the themes of free will and the purpose of humanity. The Sirens of Titan made me laugh, but it also had a huge emotional impact on me. There's a chapter that describes an alien species called harmoniums, and it's one of my favorite things that I've ever read. For me, this is an A+ work. Vonnegut himself gave The Sirens of Titan an A, and it has an average rating of 4.15 on Goodreads. Personally, I think this is a great place to start with Vonnegut's work. Mother Night, published in 1961. We are what we pretend to be, so we must be careful about what we pretend to be. Mother Night is the memoir of a character on trial for war crimes as a propagandist during World War II. But he claims he was a double agent working for the Americans. This can be a heavy read and doesn't include as many comedic or science fiction elements as some of his other books. However, I found it to have a lasting impact on me. It's an honest look at truth and morality, and I remember thinking about the ending for days after having finished it. I think this is another all-time great achievement, and I'm also going to give it an A+. I'm going to put it in the tier just behind The Sirens of Titan. Vonnegut graded Mother Night as an A, and it has a 4.23 rating on Goodreads. It's not his most read, but that is actually his highest rating on Goodreads. Cat's Cradle, published in 1963. No wonder kids grow up crazy. A cat's cradle is nothing but a bunch of X's between somebody's hands, and little kids look and look and look at all those X's. And no damn cat and no damn cradle. In Cat's Cradle, Dr. Felix Honecker has left a deadly legacy to the world, Ice-9, a lethal chemical capable of freezing the entire planet. The search for its whereabouts leads to a crazed dictator in the Caribbean. I remember finishing Cat's Cradle and thinking, this is the best book I've ever read, and it remained my favorite for the next 10 years. Why did I like it so much? Well, firstly, I think it's one of Vonnegut's funniest books. The story plays out in unexpected ways, and Vonnegut has just such a clever and amusing way of wording things. And secondly, I think it combines the themes of free will, religion, and technology in a way that's completely absurd, and yet somehow makes total sense. For me, this is absolutely an A+, and I'm going to have to put it at the top of the list. Vonnegut also graded Cat's Cradle as an A+, and it has an average Goodreads rating of 4.15. I like this book so much I wanted to pick up a special edition of it, so here's a quick sneak peek at the Folio Society edition of Cat's Cradle. I really like the design of this. You've got this cool cat's cradle on the slipcase, and I really like the colors on the outside cover design. I'll open it up and show you just one of the artworks inside. I'll leave the rest as a surprise. I think Folio did a great job with this. It's currently their only Vonnegut. Fingers crossed for more. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater, published in 1965. Hello babies, welcome to Earth. It's hot in the summer and cold in the winter. It's round and wet and crowded. At the outside, babies, you've got about 100 years here. There's only one rule that I know of, babies. God damn it, you've got to be kind. This book follows Elliot Rosewater, an itinerant, semi-crazed millionaire wandering the country in search of heritage and philanthropic redemption. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater tackles the issue of money and status and what we value in society. It also introduces Vonnegut's alter ego, Kilgore Trout. Personally, I found it rather entertaining, but I didn't find it quite as memorable as some of his other works, so for me, this is a high B. Vonnegut graded it as an A, and it has an average Goodreads rating of 3.96. Slaughterhouse-Five, published in 1969. So it goes. In Slaughterhouse-Five, Billy Pilgrim comes unstuck in time, and travels back and forth between his life as a civilian and his time as a soldier during World War II. Slaughterhouse-Five is one of the great anti-war novels, and explores the themes of death and mental illness through a non-linear structure. His use of sci-fi concepts including time travel and aliens help explore some rather heavy subject matter in a darkly funny manner. I think the famous quote, "So it goes," encapsulates Vonnegut's talent of phrasing complex and important ideas in a simple and amusing way. I found Cat's Cradle just that little bit funnier and connected to it in a slightly more personal way, but it's hard to understate how important this novel is. For me, it's definitely another A+, right behind Cat's Cradle. Vonnegut also rated Slaughterhouse-Five an A+, and it has a Goodreads rating of 4.10. It's his most rated book, and if you only choose one of his books to read, you wouldn't be making a bad choice picking this one. Breakfast of Champions, published in 1973. We are healthy only to the extent that our ideas are humane. In Breakfast of Champions, the aging writer Kilgore Trout finds, to his horror, that a Midwest car dealer is taking his fiction as truth. This is one of Vonnegut's most absurd novels, and I remember hearing it described as something along the lines of getting all the silliness out of his head. This book features a number of drawings done by Vonnegut that are rather cartoonish and amusing, and it tackles the themes of free will and mental health in an ironic fashion. I found this book funny at times, but I didn't connect with it on as deep a level, so for me, I'm going to say this one is a high C. I know it's a lot of people's favorite, and it has a 4.07 rating on Goodreads, but Vonnegut also graded it as a C, so it might just depend on what you value in a reading experience and what you're in the mood for. That actually brings us to the halfway point, so here's a quick word from today's sponsor, bananas. They're yellow and delicious. Why am I partnering with bananas? Because every sponsorship offer I get is powered by AI, and I don't want to help earn the robots money, I'd rather give my money to bananas. Slapstick, published in 1976. If you can do no good, at least do no harm. Slapstick is an apocalyptic vision as seen through the eyes of the current King of Manhattan and the last President of the United States. Similar to Breakfast of Champions, Slapstick is at the higher end of the absurdity spectrum, and while I did find it entertaining, there were times where I found it slightly more silly than I did funny. It was an interesting read because one of the themes revolved around the idea of placing more emphasis on common decency than love. And this was something I went back and forth on because I did agree with the notion of promoting more decency, but I also felt a little bit conflicted about reducing the importance of love. For me, Slapstick was a C, and even though I am going to put it at the bottom, it still gave me a lot to think about. Vonnegut graded Slapstick as a D, although he did say later on that he was a little harsh on it because of some of the negative reviews. Goodreads has it at a 3.86. I don't think any Vonnegut book is a D, but I would agree that for me it was towards the lower end of the list. Jailbird, published in 1979. I was making my mind as blank as possible, you see, since the past was so embarrassing and the future so terrifying. Jailbird is narrated by Walter F. Starbuck, a man recently released from minimum security prison after serving time for his small role in the Watergate scandal. This book explores the relationships between workers and corporations and politicians, as well as featuring a small cameo from Kilgore Trout. I enjoyed this book, but I didn't find it quite as memorable as some of his other works, so I'm going to put it in the B category, just below God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. Vonnegut thought slightly higher of it, grading it as an A, and this was actually the last book he wrote before Palm Sunday, so we won't have Vonnegut ratings for the final 5 novels. The Goodreads rating for Jailbird is 3.83. Deadeye Dick, published in 1982. That is my principal objection to life, I think. It's too easy, when alive, to make perfectly horrible mistakes. In a tale of crime and punishment, Rudy Waltz, aka Deadeye Dick, takes us on a zany tale on a search for absolution and happiness. Deadeye Dick is an examination of grief and guilt, and how many people deal with those through sex and violence and pharmaceuticals, but perhaps respite might be better found through art or music or food. This is one of his more simple books in terms of the world building, but he uses some fun writing techniques such as tying in food recipes into the narrative. He also writes these mini plays through which Rudy is able to tell certain stories, finds it easier to tell certain stories by using a third-person narrative. This is not one of Vonnegut's most popular books, but for me, it's a perfect book. I found something amusing or touching on every single page, and there was at least once per chapter where I laughed out loud or wanted to physically clap because of how brilliant I thought it was. Like most Vonnegut novels, the main focus is not the plot, but I did think he tied some things together really well, and this is probably the book he wrote where he got me to care deeply about the most characters. This book gave me the same feeling I got when I read Cat's Cradle. Deadeye Dick is definitely an A+ for me, and I'm going to leave Cat's Cradle in the top spot because it remained my favorite book for so many years, whereas I only read Deadeye Dick recently, but I'm pretty sure it's going to have a lasting impact on me too. Vonnegut didn't grade Deadeye Dick, but it has an average rating of 3.83 on Goodreads. I'm not quite sure why this one isn't as popular. Perhaps it's because the plot and the world building aren't quite as creative or as ambitious as some of his other books, but for me, the writing, the characters, the themes all clicked perfectly. I actually enjoyed this one so much, I picked up a signed limited edition from Delacorte Press. It's a simple design, but I love the feel of this slipcase, and I love the gold lettering as well as the sprayed edges. And inside we have a signature from Kurt Vonnegut himself. I gotta say, this is a treasured possession of mine, a truly special book. Galapagos, published in 1985. Some automatic device clicked in her big brain, and her knees felt weak, and there was a chilly feeling in her stomach. She was in love with this man. They don't make memories like that anymore. Galapagos takes the reader back 1 million years to the year 1986, when a simple vacation cruise suddenly becomes an evolutionary journey. Galapagos discusses topics such as the environment and evolution, as well as the nature and value of our own brains. This might be Vonnegut's angriest novel, as it skewers the many ways in which humanity is heading in the wrong direction through a mostly unsympathetic cast of characters. While it might not be my favorite in terms of the tone, I do think this is an excellent book that builds to a brilliant conclusion. I'm going to put this in A tier above Player Piano. We don't have a Vonnegut grade, but Goodreads has an average rating for Galapagos of 3.87. Bluebeard, published in 1987. "What's the point of being alive," she said, "if you're not going to communicate?" A young woman badgers Rabo Karabekian into telling his life story. But at age 71, the veteran and artist really just wants to be left alone on his Long Island estate with the secret he has locked inside his potato barn. As someone not that familiar with the abstract art world, I enjoyed diving into that through this book. And some of the themes it explores are creating art with meaning, as well as survivor syndrome. Along with Galapagos, I would describe this as one of Vonnegut's grumpier books, but in the end, this actually left me with a rather warm and positive feeling. For me, this was a strong A, and I'm going to put it at the top of A tier. Vonnegut didn't provide a grade for Bluebeard, but it has an average Goodreads rating of 4.06. Hocus Pocus, published in 1990. Another flaw in the human character is that everybody wants to build, and nobody wants to do maintenance. In Hocus Pocus, Eugene Debs Hartke is a Vietnam veteran, a college professor, and a prognosticator of the apocalypse. The excrement is about to hit the air conditioning, and it's all Eugene's fault. Hocus Pocus has a similar style to Bluebeard, but rather than focusing on the art scene, it focuses on two institutions, a college and a prison. I really enjoyed Hocus Pocus on a page-to-page basis, including Vonnegut's thoughts on war and civilian life. However, overall, I don't think the narrative came together in quite as poignant a way as some of his other books. For me, Hocus Pocus was solidly in the B tier, above Jailbird and below God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. The average rating for Hocus Pocus on Goodreads is 3.83. Timequake, published in 1997. Many people need desperately to receive this message. I feel and think much as you do, care about many of the things you care about. Although most people do not care about them, you are not alone. In the year 2001, a timequake winds the clock back a decade to 1991, making everyone in the world endure 10 years of deja vu and a total loss of free will. Timequake is a culmination of Vonnegut's observations on love and death, and time and free will. It uses a somewhat chaotic writing style and structure, and while the plot definitely meanders, I think it has some important messages for the audience. I'm going to put this in C tier between Breakfast of Champions and Slapstick. It wasn't one of my favourite Vonnegut stories, but I still appreciate it for the connections it helps provide between its readers. Vonnegut's final book, Timequake, has a 3.73 rating on Goodreads. So this is my complete ranking of all of Vonnegut's novels. 14 Slapstick, 13 Timequake, 12 Breakfast of Champions, 11 Jailbird, 10 Hocus Pocus, 9 God Bless You Mr. Rosewater, 8 Play a Piano, 7 Galapagos, 6 Bluebeard, 5 Mother Night, 4 The Sirens of Titan, 3 Slaughterhouse-Five, 2 Deadeye Dick, and number 1 Cat's Cradle. I think overall for the grades that we had available, I was actually pretty in line with Vonnegut's own opinions, and when it came to the Goodreads ratings, I felt like most of those lined up fairly well too, although the two sort of outliers were I was a little bit lower on Breakfast of Champions, and I was pretty high on Deadeye Dick. So there you go. If you haven't read Vonnegut before, I hope this video inspired you to pick something up and helped with maybe where you might like to start. If you have read Vonnegut before, let me know your rankings in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, smash or just gently click the subscribe button. And if you really enjoyed it, consider checking out the perks of becoming a Patreon member, where you can become one of my robots, androids, or cyborgs, like Nima and New Eden, Half Ogre, Zakoway, and the Slapstick Colin. What are the perks of becoming a Patreon member? Well, one of them is that you get to vote for a book to be placed on the Quantum Wheel, which I spin once a month in order to determine the patron pick of the month. Speaking of which, it's time now to spin the Quantum Wheel for my patron pick for May. Welcome to the Quantum Wheel Sci-Fi Lighting Edition. As always, the patron picks are both simultaneously picked and not picked until we observe a winner. Let's find out what I'll be reading in the month of May. Spin, Quantum Wheel, spin. Oh, it's making me dizzy today. I'm fired up, I'm excited. What's it going to land on? Ooh, it slow rolled us there. A little drama added by the Quantum Wheel. The Inverted World. The Inverted World by Christopher Priest, or Inverted World, depending on which edition you have. Anyway, I'm excited to read this. I'm a fan of the film The Prestige. I know that Christopher Priest wrote the novel, and a lot of my friends have been talking about The Inverted World, so I guess that's a sign that it was time for me to get on it and read it in the month of May. Feel free to join me. So there you go, that's the video. Thank you to Kurt Vonnegut, thank you to my sponsor Bananas, and thank you for watching. You can find more sci-fi content over here.